You said specifically you don't believe there's a path forward for anything other than a ban, which is a step up from what you said in the past. Why take it that far?
Look, it seems almost every week there's a new leaked material coming out of TikTok that just really eviscerates the trust. And at the end of the day, the national security agencies have been working on what's known as Project Texas, which is to move a lot of TikTok's operations to Oracle servers here in the U.S., and that's the response to national security concerns. The problem with that is there's a new report about 10 days ago from Forbes that had a TikTok official out of L.A. having an unusual outside business hour meeting where they were asking another TikTok employee detailed questions about the location and other details of those Oracle servers. We also have leaked materials from a D.C. TikTok official that said once that Project Texas is put in place, it remains to be seen if Beijing can still get access to U.S. user data, because at the end of the day, these are their tools that they built in China. So if TikTok isn't sure that these new protections will safeguard U.S. user data, then I don't think we should be so sure either.
Now, you don't have the authority to ban TikTok. So what are you hoping to accomplish with this assertion?
Yeah, that's right. This isn't like Huawei or ZTE or China Mobile, where we at the FCC had federal funding at issue or FCC license at issue. But what I gained from all those cases was some insight into dealing with companies that have ties back into communist China and sort of malign data flows. And so I'm happy to sort of bring that expertise to bear and talk about it. But the reality is this is broad and bipartisan. You've got Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat chairman of Senate Intel, who looks at a lot of really interesting security briefings every day. And he has said that it is TikTok that scares the dickens out of him. You have just last week, Democrat Chairwoman Schakowsky in the House. She wrote a letter with Republican Bill Aracas to Apple and Google saying, we're concerned about your continued inclusion of TikTok in the App Store. So this isn't just about me. This is about broad, deep, bipartisan concern that's being expressed. And you're right. This ultimately, I think, in the lead is going to be Treasury, which has the CFIUS process. And I think that should be the focus of federal action, is the Treasury CFIUS process, not the FCC, but it could potentially be the FTC or the Commerce Department as well.
So what do you hope to come out of that national security agreement with TikTok that we have at this moment?
I've been open, at least theoretically, for a while, that there is some agreement that's put in place that addresses national security concerns. But there was a New York Times piece a couple weeks ago that said there's a tentative deal that's been put in place, or a draft deal with TikTok, but then it had multiple high-level sources in the Justice Department saying that the number two in the DOJ is concerned that that tentative deal isn't tough enough. And so I think we have to be very careful here going forward that we're not allowing data flows back into China, because it's not just about espionage and foreign influence, but we're also feeding China's AI. And AI can be used for good or it can be used for bad. And the PLA and the CCP have set a goal of dominating AI. So I'm very concerned about us sending data back in a way that's going to improve and make that AI effective for nefarious purposes.
So the question is, how far do you take this? Should companies like Meta, Alphabet, Apple have employees in China, in your view, at all?
Well, look, I do think this is an opportunity here where we need to revisit these deep corporate ties into China, particularly as Xi saber rattles on Taiwan, coming out of the Communist Party confab of last week. I was just in Taiwan for 2 days last week myself, and I think it is time to start thinking about diversifying outside of China. Now, up to now, my concern has been focused on individual companies and what I call plus factors, meaning it's not just that you have ties back into communist China, but there's something else there that's concerning. That was the case with Huawei, with ZTE, and that's the case with TikTok. So I'm not ready to make a broader pronouncement more generally about companies that are doing business there.
Now, we've got a midterm election happening in a matter of hours, and I'm curious what your hope is for, a new Congress, along with FTC Chair Lina Khan, to take action or not on big tech over the next couple of years.
Well, actually, election, obviously I sort of leave it to the American people to make their decisions there, particularly by the Hatch Act. I'm not in a position to make sort of partisan comments there. But what I'll say is, generally, I do think it's important that we find some alignment, Republicans and Democrats alike, on addressing, outsized abuse of corporate power. And I do think we're starting to see more and more bipartisan interest in that topic. And I would always look forward to find partners on, both sides of the political aisle to drive towards that result. And again, when it comes to TikTok in particular, I mean, my sense is that the tide is moving out on TikTok. And again, you see almost every week new letters from new bipartisan members of Congress that are focused on this issue.
What's the latest on the plan to ban all Huawei and ZTE telecom equipment from the U.S. market? Is the FCC going to be voting on that soon?
We're making really good progress. A couple of years ago, we voted to withdraw all future funding for Huawei and ZTE equipment, and we're right now funding the ripping and replacing. Axios, I believe, had a report a couple of weeks ago that said that we're about to vote at the FCC on denying equipment authorization for those devices, which would close what I've described as a Huawei loophole, which means up to now, you can't use federal dollars to purchase this gear, but you can use private dollars, buy the same gear, put it in the same point in your network. And I've long called for us to close that loophole. So to the extent that Axios reporting is right, that the FCC is moving forward with that vote, and I don't want to get into the details of it, but suffice to say, I'd be very happy with that outcome at the FCC.
And quickly, at the FTC, what are your thoughts on the actions that Lina Khan has taken so far?
Look, I think our guiding principle has to be to protect individual liberty. We can have threats to individual liberty from the overreach of government, but we can also have threats to individual liberty from the abuse of corporate power. We've got to find a way here to have that as our guiding star. And I know it's been a partisan time at the FTC, and they've had a hard time agreeing at the FCC. We've been working to the middle, compromising and finding common ground, and I hope that we continue to do that at the FCC at least.
And last quick question, what's your response to the changes that Elon Musk is making at Twitter thus far? Do you like what you're seeing?
Yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we end up with protecting a widespread of political views. At the end of the day, I think these are the modern version of the digital town square. But I don't think we need to just rely on the benevolence of Elon Musk or any other billionaire to come in and purchase a platform. That's why I've had my position for years now. We need some pro-speech guardrails. So let's protect political speech. Let's make sure there's not discrimination against it. Let's push for user empowerment, transparency, accountability. So while I'm hopeful that Elon Musk bends Twitter's content moderation towards a diversity of views, I don't think we should rely on that alone. I do think we should put regulations in place that are going to protect political speech in the digital town square.